Sup nerds, let's take a look at the RGDS. And before anything, let me just say this white model looks clean. And it does nail the DSi feel quite well. It does have the 4 face buttons out here, ABXY just like the DS, the D-pad, start and select, similar location to where they were on the DSi. But of course, on the left side here is the Embernic button, which on stock pulls down the Android menu. And then of course there's also the back and home button for Android. Of course, the biggest notable difference to the DS here are the 2 analog sticks, which honestly don't really have a purpose if DS games are what you want to emulate. But if you are going to play PS1 and N64, it could come in handy, I guess. There's also a microphone here right in the center, 2 front-facing speakers which are really nice. It has these nice little rubber pads here to prevent plastic on plastic slamming when you close the device, and so that the screens aren't touching the plastic. And of course, being rubber, they are soft to the touch. There's an audio port at the bottom here, a lanyard slot on both ends. On the right side, there are lights for green charging and yellow and red for when the battery gets low. On the side, there's also the volume up and down and 1 janky power button. On top here, there is a micro SD slot and 2 baffling USB-C ports. This one here is for charging and USB connection to the computer, and the middle one is the OTG, maybe for controllers, keyboards perhaps, a mouse, who knows. It also has L2 and R2 unlike the normal DS. And on the back here, it has 4 screws. The back plate / casing can be taken apart pretty easily. And of course, the Embernic logo and some battery information. The other bucket likes that this is very clean, not even any labeling on the front. The thumbsticks are pretty shallow, they really wouldn't be good for any twin stick gaming. Kinda feels like the PS Vita thumbsticks. The D-pad and face buttons are clicky with rubber membranes, and they feel fantastic as with most Embernic devices. But all of the other buttons feel clicky without a rubber membrane, and it gets pretty loud and popping. But at least the main buttons that you will use will feel great. The hinge is just tight and pressurized, is not wobbly with any give like it was in the actual Nintendo DS devices. And it doesn't have set positions, so it can go anywhere because of how stiff it is. And it will hold any position no matter in what orientation you angle it at. But honestly, we prefer how the old DS and DSi had the flatter angles to them, and a little less wobble than the 3DS. It's also fairly big, so it does feel a little less comfortable than the original consoles, and it is definitely heavier, but completely serviceable. Let's right off the bat talk about some negative points here. Now, the thing about this particular RGDS is that the other bucket put Rocknix on this, so we'll talk a little about why. The main reason, of course, is that without custom OS, this was honestly not a very good device. It had a ton of problems that is widely known by now, and a ton of people made videos on all that already. But with Rocknix, almost all of the issues have been addressed, and it definitely feels now like a real DS replacement. Right now when this one boots up, it goes into Gamma OS, cause that's what the other bucket tested on this device first. And though the Gamma OS does address a lot of the issues with the stock OS, it's still being Android based, it does still feel a bit slow and jittery with issues that were similar to the ones in the stock. After a lot of testing, the other bucket does feel like Rocknix is his preferred method to having this device actually usable as a DS replacement. One of the biggest issues we've noticed on StockOS and on GammaOS as well is that there is a certain latency with the D-pad. And this tiny teeny menu shows up, which is funny. And as you can see, it bugs out for a little bit before reorienting itself to figure out how to launch Daijisho, and then it goes back into the game list. Also, not an OS issue, but the power button on this device is a little janky, like I mentioned before. It doesn't respond every time, even when pressing it clearly. And the only way to get into Rocknix for the other bucket is to boot up first and then restart it, which has something to do with the eMMC and the memory being confused with being flashed with a different OS. But we have seen it happen with other people who haven't flashed a different OS as well. The non-main buttons in this device, as previously mentioned, are very clicky and loud, so the other bucket will try to do some tape mods to see if that helps a bit. And now we are in Rocknix. So this is a custom setup and it is version 2026-03-10. They are releasing these nightlies and are still in beta. So this isn't quite the official version yet, but it is mostly functional. And once you set up all the systems and script the art, it is a very comfy setup, very snappy, and fast loading. And it's basically a custom version of the Drastic DS for the DS emulation with RetroArch setup for everything else. Now for the good things, once this is fully set up, which does take a lot, setting up all of the emulation configs, the hotkeys that you want, the user interface theme that you can choose from, which Rocknix has a ton of themes to choose and download, all of the custom collection displays, which systems you want, scraping of the arts, setting up your Wi-Fi, your accounts, all of that stuff and updating everything. It does take a good bit, and then configuring any game with the fixes that you need, such as some games requiring high-res 3D and some not. But once you do all that, it does become a comfy DS handheld, works really well with the sleep mode, still has a working indicator light, the extra buttons all work in this OS, and it supports save state and fast forwarding on pretty much all of the DS games now that the performance is fixed. In fact, the performance is fixed, the CPU is overclocked, and on Rocknix they have undervolted it as well. And of course, that last setting is something you can pick yourselves to what you prefer. And as you can see, it has nice and quick launches as well. And you can quickly adjust the screens as you need them, unlike the stock in GammaOS. But both the stock OS and GammaOS are pretty new, so things could change eventually. And you can see that in the pause menu, it has that tiny menu problem, just like GammaOS did. But as you can see, it does react much faster. And the touchscreen also works really well. The volume also has a really good range, it is comfy at low levels, and it can get very loud as well. So just as a demo for what we were showing earlier, as you can see, Rocknix doesn't have the latency problem that stock and Gamma OS had. It actually feels like a real DS. Here you can see the bottom screen without latency. Of course, it is impossible to not have any latency at all in emulation, but this is very close. For some of the games that run slower with the high-res 3D, it has the option to configure to add threaded CPU to fix that if it is supported by the ROM. And the refresh rate is a very smooth experience when that works correctly. So of course your mileage may vary. All the games will work with standard resolution, most will work at 2x resolution in drastic, and then a lot of them will still work with the threaded CPU if they need it. There's occasionally some bugs in the screen switching or the touchscreen swapping whenever that happens, but for the most part it is a very cromulent updated DS device, especially with the nice screen with better brightness, better speakers, and Rocknix having shortcuts for both brightness and volume as well. Let's show some of the other emulations through RetroArch outside of DS. Let's see some more retro stuff that are a bit heavier this time, since it can handle anything up to PS1 without any problems at native resolution. Of course, save state, fast forward and all that good stuff, but N64 and Dreamcast will still struggle a bit. Now, these are some of the mods that the other bucket did to this RGDS. As mentioned before, he put some tapes under the buttons to make it a bit more silent. Let's hear the button sounds before the tape. Pretty loud, huh? Now, this is after the tape mod. Pretty good, huh? He also 3D printed this little doodad, which you can simply plug into the middle USB-C port. Like so. And that will keep your stylus on here nice and tidy. Not only that, but the other bucket was kind enough to upload those print files for anyone who would like to print their own as well. You can find the link in the description down below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The RGDS in completely stock is not a very great experience, but it can be made to be a pretty good DS replacement. And as shown here, through some simple modifications, it can be made further more comfortable. So, what do you think? Do you already have an RGDS? What was your experience with it? Let us know in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider helping the channel out by clicking join down below to become a member. Subscribe to some more videos like this. And of course, always nerd on.